Believe it or not, this is take number 2. The Dore Report is in studio at HQ at long last. SEC Unfiltered, the Dore Report, Nashville, Tennessee. We are on site where, dare I say, Will, the biggest game of the college football weekend. All due respect to the Vols and Bama. Hey, listen, everybody who's anybody's in Nashville this weekend, baby. Again, really excited. Appreciate you all joining us, Will. Thank you for joining me in studio, my friend. It's always great chatting with you before every single preseason. I'm honored to have you here at HQ. And we got a lot to discuss, man. What's going on?
Yeah, hot start to the weekend, hot start to the show. Redoing the intro here.
You mix some rally pillows, you mix some outlaw lights. Some things can occur. But either way, we're here. We're making it happen. We're fighting through adversity, just like Clark would have us do.
Just like Clark would want, fighting through adversity. It's great to be here. Great to do this in person. We've done quite a few shows over Zoom or over StreamYard or whatever, but I think it's much better being in person and kind of having this back and forth. So excited to get into a little Vanderbilt football. And I don't know if the biggest game of the weekend necessarily. I'm not going to fully say that with Alabama, Tennessee, but definitely I think the second biggest game of the weekend, and that's kind of hard to argue with an 11 a.m. kick on ABC. So the second game in a row, the Commodores are on the national broadcast. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, loaded college football slate. But again, all eyes are on Nashville. We're here in Nashville for the SEC Unfiltered Tour, which I'm stoked for many reasons. Most of all, to be with you guys in Lot 2, which if I'm still welcome, we'll get to that in just a second. But I do want to highlight really quickly, as Clark Lee would have you do, you held me accountable this morning. We made this convo happen when I low-key tried to back out. I thought, hey, maybe we're both a little too busy. We'll push it back. You pushed back on me, and for that, sir, I'm grateful for it.
Push back a little bit. More of a guilt trip than anything else. That's what I would describe it as. Chris, we released episode 337 of the Dore Report today, and I kind of teased it in the intro that I would be joining SEC Unfiltered here and talking a little Vandy football, and Chris had a lot going on today. And you're like, I don't know if we're going to be able to make it work. And I was like, don't worry, I teased it on the show, but Vanderbilt fans are used to being let down, so they'll let it slide for you.
We could not set the tone for this weekend, one of the most magical and epic weekends in SEC Unfiltered history, if I'm being totally transparent. SEC Unfiltered Tour history, no doubt, because it is a home game for SECU. It is a massive, massive game for the Commodores. Going to be one of the biggest parties this city's ever seen. Let's talk about it, Will. I mean, again, I want to get your thoughts on this season at this point. You and I talked before the season started. There was this narrative of Vandy's not going to sneak up on anybody. Can Diego Pavia really do it again? Like, has the magic run out for Clark Lee and the Commodores? Well, I mean, all they did was open up the season. They smacked Virginia Tech. They smacked South Carolina and ended that losing streak in emphatic fashion. Gave Alabama all they wanted for 4 quarters. There's no moral victories, obviously, which that's how it should be. There's no more moral victories at the doors. We come into a game middle of October, not a playoff eliminator, but certainly a game that's going to help shape the college football playoff picture. Your thoughts on the Doors to this point? What stood out to you? What surprised you, if anything? Just your overall impressions to this point in the season.
So there's a lot to that. I would say what has surprised me the most is Vanderbilt last year was heavy running the football. I think they ran the football close to 60% of the time. Maybe it was like 55%. I don't have the stats in front of me. This year, they're much more of a 50-50 pass and run. Not saying that's the best at times. I mean, you can go to that Alabama game, and I think the biggest stat that jumps off the page is Vanderbilt ran the football to their running back 6 total times. That's crazy. The fact that happened, I don't know what was going on with that game plan with Tim Beck up until this point. I thought the offensive game plans were pretty great out of Tim Beck. He was truly in his bag with play calling. But in that Alabama game, you throw the ball 35 times, you run it to your back 6 total times. Diego Pavia with 12 carries. You're kind of asking what's going on there. I think Vanderbilt's going to try to get back to what they do in this LSU game, and an LSU defense that's pretty solid, kind of a 180 from what they were last year. But so far this season, I mean, going into the season, there's a bit of this narrative of like, okay, that was cute last year, went 7-6, got a Birmingham Bowl victory. What I think people didn't anticipate is how much talent Vanderbilt had coming back and how much depth they have on this roster. So Diego Pavia gets all the headlines, and justifiably so. I mean, he's one of the biggest stars in all of college football, and Vanderbilt should lean into that. But what they have depth-wise across the board is just something Vanderbilt's never had. I mean, they're 2 to 3 deep at every single position with legitimate SEC athletes, and that's kind of what you've seen. Outside of the Alabama game, Vanderbilt's dominated second halves, and that's something that's been the complete opposite in years past. So the offensive line has performed well. The defensive line is getting to the quarterback pretty consistently. They have a stable of running backs. They have a talented tight end room. And they've actually got some weapons on the outside this year. And Junior Sherrill coming back, looking like he's taken a step forward to be a true SEC wide receiver one. You've got Eli Stowers in that tight end room, maybe the best tight end in the country, according to the preseason AP. He was the first team I'm butchering my words here, first team All-American tight end, and they brought in some great transfers that have kind of filled some stop gaps across the board. So this Vanderbilt team's talented, and they're certainly not sneaking up on anybody this year. That's the only thing that kind of pissed me off in all these conversations that I had.
I loved how fired up you got in the preseason. You got the whole sneaking up on people. It's like, at what point were they not sneaking up on people last year? What did it take? The Bama win? I mean...
Yeah, you could argue in some capacity they quote unquote snuck up on Bama in some ways. Like maybe Bama didn't come into it fully expecting Vanderbilt's physicality and fully expecting them to dominate in the trenches. But at the same time, if you watch this Vanderbilt team last year, they were beating teams. I mean, granted, they went 6-6. They beat Georgia Tech in the Birmingham Bowl. And the thing that gave Vanderbilt fans a lot of hope was Diego Pavia was hurt the last half of the season. And then you saw him have a few weeks to get healthy. You saw them beat what has turned out to be, and Vanderbilt fans all knew this, a damn good Georgia Tech team with Haynes King in the Birmingham Bowl. And so you've seen that momentum carry over. And I wasn't one. It was a hard balance for me going to the preseason because I thought this Vanderbilt team was going to be good. And so far they have been good. But I also wasn't one of the pie in the sky guys that was like, they're making the CFP. They're going to have a miracle season. So it was a tough balance for me. The one thing was they're not going to need to sneak up on teams. This is a team that is just as talented as pretty much everybody in the SEC. And generally this year in the SEC and across college football, the parity is just crazy. I mean, you saw Tennessee go down to the wire with Arkansas last week with an interim head coach. I mean, it's up for the taking. The transfer portal has changed everything. Teams like Georgia and Alabama can't just stockpile 4 and 5 stars. If they don't play in the first year or two, they're gone to another Power 4 school. And Vanderbilt's benefited from that greatly in the transfer portal and NIL era.
I think what we've learned a lot, Will, about this team and this program this season, Diego Pavia got all the headlines. Deservedly so. I mean, he's an electric factory. He's one of the most electric players in college football, but this team is so much more than him. But I do want to focus on Diego Pavia. And speaking of Diego Pavia, all you out there, I'm sure all you Doors watching, you're going to watch the vlog, and maybe you're going to be at Lot 2. Watch out for your boy's fit this weekend. Got a little special surprise out there for all the Doors. Talk about Diego Pavia, though, specifically, what you've seen from him. Do you feel like he's taken steps forward? Is he even better than he was last year?
I think he is better than he was last year. I mean, he's in complete control of this offense, more continuity with Tim Beck, more continuity with this roster. The biggest change in Pavia is last year he just didn't turn the ball over at all. I mean, 4 total interceptions. That was his thing. This year he's taking more risks, pushing the ball down the field a little bit more, and that's resulted in some turnovers, which is what ultimately doomed them in the Alabama game was 2 red zone turnovers. If you take those red zone turnovers away against Alabama, Vandy's likely to go up in that first quarter by 2 scores. Unfortunately, Diego Pavia fumble. I know the final score in that Bama game was 30-14. Where people forget is with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Vanderbilt was in the red zone, driving to take the lead 20-14. Diego Pavia threw an interception. But so far, he's been better than he was last year. Turns out that just having a little more film on him, SEC defensive coordinators can't just shut him down. He's just a damn good player, and he's a damn good college quarterback. Now, what you've seen, he's just in control. Like, the magic of Pavia is still there, but he looks so much more comfortable in this offense. Now they're facing a pretty damn good LSU defense this weekend. And you could make an argument that so far this year outside of Alabama, Vanderbilt hasn't faced really any elite defenses. Now I do disagree with that a little bit. I think South Carolina's got a really solid defense. But he's just in complete control. And this scheme just fits him so perfectly. And it's allowed him to kind of innovate within the offense, and you're seeing more confidence, might be a strong statement, but you're seeing continued confidence out of Diego Pavia this year, and you're really seeing him flash through the air more than you saw last year.
Well, Will, what can't be argued is the game is going to be played and won before the game is ever played and won, before a snap's ever taken. Lot 2, Saturday morning. Make sure you're there. SEC Unfiltered are going to be on hand. It's going to be an absolute party. Our friends at Outlaw Light are going to be Outlaw Beer, providing tons of cold beverages for libations. Cheers
libations,
to libations.
Baby.
Libations all about in the city of Nashville. We're well known for libations here, I feel like. I've been out a time or two. Yeah. We're known for libations. speaking a lot to, speaking of the tailgate, speaking of the Dore Report, some would say Hack Squat Jim Duggan and I have a little beef going on. Is there some, I feel like, and listen, I'll admit it, I was a little bit of a Dore doubter early, a little bit of a Diego doubter early. Took me a little bit to drink the Kool-Aid, dive all the way in. Where do Hack Squat Jim? I feel like we got some beef to settle when we get to the tailgate Saturday.
We're going to have to figure it out. I can't speak for Hack Squat Jim Duggan. I can't be my co-host on the Dore Report. I can't speak for him. But likely you might have to settle it with Oklahoma Drills in Lot 2, and that's a beefy man to settle it with Oklahoma Drills in Lot 2. Might get a little embarrassed out there for you.
I have a lot of pride, but not that much. I don't want any of that smoke. I got to be honest. You heard me, Trev. I don't want any of that smoke from you. You guys talked about it on your show. I know I texted you guys and we were discussing this because I wanted to get you guys' thoughts before I said it on air when we previewed the game, predicted the game, what have you. Biggest game of the Clark Lee era. It's either this one or the Bama game that was just played. I think because of I think personally because of coming off the bye at home, national television audience again. The stage is set. That Bama game was so interesting. It was so unique, kind of its own thing because of what happened last year and the quote unquote revenge factor. And like you said, I think no more victories. The encouraging thing, though, Diego Pavia said going in that week, and I loved it. If we play Vanderbilt football, it won't be close. Right? He had tons of confidence going in. Here's the reality. They did not play Vanderbilt football. They did not win the time of possession. They did not take care of the football. You mentioned in that game, they didn't run the football with their backs like they're accustomed to. And like you said, that's still a game. Then in the fourth quarter, and that score is skewed because, Alabama scores with 20 seconds left or whatever to pull away and make it look worse than it was. Again, no moral victories, but I feel like that now slides the emphasis from that one to this one. Biggest game of the Clark Lee era. Is that fair? Am I crazy to even say it's one of the biggest games in Vanderbilt football history because of what it could spark down the road?
Yeah, we discussed this in depth on episode 337 of the Dore Report. I would say I would make the slight differentiating factor here being biggest versus most important. So I think that Alabama game was the biggest game in modern Vanderbilt
college
football
game
history.
day.
I mean, the amount of eyes, you were the number one most watched game across the country, 6.4 million viewers. That was really the first opportunity for the nation as a whole to take in Vanderbilt football. But I think this one is the most important. This one sets the stage for the rest of the season. Can Vanderbilt truly be a CFP contender? If they move to 6-1, they're likely worst case going to be moving into that top 12, top 10 probably range. If they lose this one, it doesn't eliminate them from that miracle discussion, but going 5-0 during this final stretch of games, that's a tall task with what they have still on the table. So I would say most important, but not necessarily biggest. And that's maybe a small vernacular difference and whatever, maybe a little ticky-tack. But yeah, I think it's the most important game, not just in the Clark Lee era, but probably in modern Vanderbilt football history. And I don't think that's too big of a statement because, I'm a Vanderbilt guy, but they don't have the best modern football history by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I mean, this is everything this Saturday. I think the Alabama game, to some extent, and I hate using this term, but it was somewhat a house money game. It's like you can lose this one. Everything is still out in front of you. If you lose it, you're not going to plummet in the polls if you happen to lose that game, as long as you don't get blown out. And that's not what happened. But yeah, this is the opportunities that were still in front of them. I was specifically thinking about this LSU game, and you haven't talked about it yet, but Vanderbilt's a home favorite against number 10 LSU.
Yeah.
That's something that I never would have thought I was saying, 2 years ago, that Vanderbilt would be favored at home against top 10 LSU.
Yeah, what is it, the first time ever, I think? They've been favored at top 10 at home. I wanted to get your take on that before we got into the actual nitty-gritty of the game and your thoughts on the matchup. I mean, when you saw the line come out on Sunday, Vanderbilt -1.5, Will, it's now to 2.5. People are betting on the doors. What was your immediate reaction to the idea that Vanderbilt's favored against the top 10 LSU?
It genuinely didn't shock me. I'm a bit of a gambling guy, so I thought it was going to be right around there. Yeah, bit of a gambling guy. But I thought it was going to be right around. Maybe LSU would be favored by 1.5. Maybe Vanderbilt would be favored by 1.5. But it still didn't feel real when I saw Vanderbilt was favored. And maybe it gives a little credence to the ESPN matchup predictor, or whatever the hell that means. But they have Vanderbilt with a 60.8% chance to win this game. I don't know if I'll put any stock into that. Yeah. It's kind of shocking. And what Clarkley has done over the last couple of years, combined with Jerry Kill, Diego Pavia, Tim Beck, it's just been impressive to see the turnaround from 2023 and a team that went 2-10, and just Clarkley taking a step back, completely revamping what he is doing and just starting from scratch and kind of taking a step back, putting the ego aside and saying, maybe I need to take in some more experienced coaches to get in his ear.
We've come a long way from you and I in the preseason 2024 talking about what Clarkley needs to do to keep his job. Now Vanderbilt hosting a top 10 team, favored against a top 10 team. The LSU Tigers, I'll ask you about them. I'm sure you guys have done a lot of digging, a lot of research. You've obviously seen them, watched them. It's weird because I don't know if there's a team in college football that feels worse about where they are with the record they have. Because it's like, you look at them on paper, hey, they're 5-1. I mean, lost a tough game in Oxford to an Ole Miss team that they've lost to them in years past and still had good seasons. And the home team in that series has won a lot. But the way they are playing, that is again, that fan base, you would think they're 1-5. What have you seen from LSU just watching them? I think the offensive struggles are pretty well documented. The defense is elite, like you mentioned. What jumps out to you about LSU?
Yeah, after watching them in 2024 and seeing them in 2025, I don't know if I can think of an example of a team that has done a 180 on both sides of the football and is still maintained kind of exactly where they were last season. They didn't have a bad year last year, but the offense was elite or close to elite, and the defense was terrible. Couldn't stop a nosebleed. This year is the complete opposite. Doesn't feel like the offense can get anything going, but that defense is one of the best in the country. I think they're 4th in the country. I could be wrong. Don't have the stats in front of me, giving up like 12.2 points per game against FBS opponents. But the offense is averaging 19.8 points per game this season versus they were averaging over 30 points a game last year. It's kind of hard to pinpoint what's going on with that LSU team. Is it the offensive line? They're struggling to run the football. Nussmeier looks, I don't know if the right word is injured or if the right word is hurt, but in that South Carolina game, I watched the whole thing. Every time he got hit, he looked like he was just in severe pain, like having to be scooped up by his offensive line. So I don't know. I can't pinpoint exactly what the problem is with this LSU offense. I mean, they have talented receivers. They've got maybe one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country. And you think with LSU, even with complaints about their offensive line in fall camp, it's like, well, LSU's still going to have guys on the offensive line. So I don't know exactly what the issue is because they're still completing a super high percentage of their passes. I think they're completing like 78% of their passes, but they're not very efficient when they're completing those passes. And you would think with the transfer in of Barryon Brown from Kentucky that wouldn't be a problem, but it seems to be a problem. So Vanderbilt secondary is probably the weakness of this team. So it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to contain Nussmeier.
Let's start there then. Again, and I think that's where a lot of the skepticism for LSU comes in. Maybe some of the reason that Vanderbilt's favored in the football game as much as it is Vandy's strengths, as it is LSU's weaknesses and the way they've looked. How do Clarkley, this defensive staff, how does this defense attack LSU to continue the trend that has been them struggling so mightily offensively?
You know, for lack of just being chalk and saying something that's way easier said than done, you got to get pressure on the quarterback. You got to get pressure on Nussmeier. You got to hit him early, and you got to hit him often. LSU has not shown the ability to consistently run the football, but they've shown the ability to consistently complete passes. So you got to make Nussmeier uncomfortable. You got to hit him. Like I said, I don't know if he's injured, but I think he's definitely hurt, whether it's bumps and bruises or whatever it is. And Vanderbilt's done a much better job this season of getting pressure on the quarterback. I think they're top 30, top 40 in the country and pressure on percentage of dropbacks. But yeah, you just got to make Nussmeier uncomfortable, and that's going to be the key to stopping this LSU defense or offense.
Other side of the football, Will, we know it all starts with Diego Pavia. We mentioned what they didn't do in the Bama game offensively, taking care of the football, running the football effectively. In your mind, when you look at the matchup, again, it's going to be tough sledding, getting points against this LSU defense. But I will say the one thing that LSU has shown they are susceptible to is a mobile quarterback, a quarterback that can get outside of the pocket, a quarterback like Diego Pavia. Mm-hmm. What is, because again, we just talked, it's so much more than Diego. What's the key or keys in your mind for the offensive side to have success, sustain drives, put points up on the board, and put the pressure on the Tigers?
LSU's defense has been really good at stopping the run this year. However, Vanderbilt's number 1 in the country in yards per carry. Vanderbilt's averaging 6.7 yards per carry. So number 1, Vanderbilt has to get more than 6 carries to their running backs. They kind of have a 3/4-headed monster in the backfield. Cedric Alexander, MK Young, AJ Newberry, James L. Laster. They have to get those guys carries, and they have to establish the run. However, where LSU is kind of susceptible is actually through the air. So while that might be contradictory, if Vanderbilt's going to win this game, they have to establish the run. They have to win that battle of good on good. They've got to. The LSU linebacking group is extremely talented with the Weeks brothers. However, I think against, like you said, susceptible to a mobile quarterback, I think their gap integrity, while they're really talented, I think their gap integrity might be susceptible against kind of a read option scheme like Vanderbilt runs. So Vanderbilt's going to have to win the line of scrimmage against this LSU defense and then take their shots downfield once they establish that run, and safety's going to have to drop down into the box.
Will, I want to ask you this as a college football man, because I look at the coaching matchup, and I think Vanderbilt, I don't think it's too bold to say, might have the coaching advantage. Clark Lee against Brian Kelly at this point. I am of one, let me say this, I am starting to lose faith and trust in Brian Kelly and being the guy for LSU. Like, you as a college football man, maybe even this game aside the point, like what do you make of Brian Kelly and Brian Kelly at LSU specifically?
Well, outside of Hugh Freeze, Brian Kelly's my least favorite head coach in the SEC. That Any Given Saturday documentary kind of cemented that, as Hugh Freeze is my least favorite. Brian Kelly's my second least favorite. But I mean, it's an interesting dynamic because that I haven't really seen talked about that much. We had one of our writers, George Barclay, put up an article today about it, but Clark Lee was coaching underneath Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. And that kind of student teacher kind of thing is usually a big storyline going into these games. And I just haven't seen a lot of discussion about it. I mean, Brian Kelly's a really great recruiter. When he has resources, he can bring in the talent. But as far as allowing that talent to execute and allowing that talent to flourish, I'm just not sure. I don't know if there's any big gaping holes in Brian Kelly's coaching ability or anything like that, but I don't know what it is, to be honest. Just it always seems like he has the talent to get it done, but for whatever reason, they just fall slightly short. I think it's going to be interesting. I think oftentimes that student-teacher kind of dynamic is overhyped and overemphasized to a certain extent, but I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that chess match between Brian Kelly and Clark Lee this Saturday.
Will, other intangibles for this game? This is a game you can look at the numbers and the X's and O's, and I know all the ball knowers out there will try to beat you over the head with all of it. But anything else you look at in this game that maybe goes beyond the numbers that you don't see on a stat sheet that you're looking for from Vanderbilt if they're going to win this football game? Maybe something that they have to do that even goes beyond what the stat sheet will say on Saturday.
Beyond the stat sheet, I will say an interesting stat poll is both these teams are two of the most penalized teams in the entire country. So number one, Vanderbilt struggled with penalties this year. So is LSU. Vanderbilt needs to win the penalty battle. I know some of that's out of your control, whatever. SEC refs are going to SEC ref. But you got to be more disciplined than LSU. I don't think the talent discrepancy is big whatsoever. I think Vanderbilt's just as talented as LSU. I would say getting more involvement with Vanderbilt's playmakers. You saw early in the season guys like Trey Richardson really make some big-time plays against Virginia Tech, South Carolina. He was completely uninvolved against Alabama. Guys like Caleb Barnett on some jet sweeps, who's a freshman, kind of that speed, quick kind of guy, 5'8", really small jitterbug kind of wide receiver. I want to see a lot more of that jet sweep stuff. I want to see Vanderbilt getting their guys into space with the opportunity to make plays down the field. And I'm going to keep just hammering it home. Vanderbilt has to run the ball more than 6 times with their running backs. That is just the most mind-boggling stat. I was in Tuscaloosa at the Alabama game, and in the back of my brain, I was like, man, they're not running the ball a lot. And when I looked at the box score, it shocked me. I couldn't believe it. So that's maybe not off the box score, but they got to get their playmakers involved. On the defensive side, it's going to be interesting to see how guys that have had success so far this season against a somewhat susceptible LSU offensive line, guys like Miles Capers, guys like Corday Sidnor, are they going to be able to create pressure on Nussmeier? Maybe not get sacks, but create pressure, get hits on him as he's throwing the football, and get Nussmeier uncomfortable early. That's stuff that's not going to show up in the box score, but can Vanderbilt get pressure with just their base full rushing the quarterback? Steve Gregory, their defensive coordinator, has no problem sending pressure, but it would be nice to see Vanderbilt get pressure without having to send extra guys. And because if you have to send extra guys, there's a chance LSU is just going to pick you apart.
How were you guys treated in Tuscaloosa, by the way?
At the beginning in Tuscaloosa, everybody was super nice. I have some issues with how Alabama fans like to talk. They are a spoiled fan base, to say the least. They like to be very nice before, very nice as the game is tight, and then as you are leaving the stadium after they've secured a victory, then all of a sudden the shit talk begins. That is what bothered me. Talk shit the entire time or don't talk shit at all. That's kind of a basic rule of thumb there. So that was, it was a good time. Tuscaloosa is a great town. It was a great environment with College Game Day. Overall, I would say treated middle of the road. It was up and down depending on the person. I'm not a big fan of the Alabama fan base, to be honest, but they're certainly not my least favorite in the SEC.
I ask you that because, as we know, LSU fans, I love them to death. They can be a little rough around the edges at times themselves, those Cajuns. They know how to party. It's interesting, and I want to get just the vibe you felt this week. In years past in a game like this, maybe we've seen, I was at the Vandy, Texas game last year, and half the stadium is painted burnt orange. The fan support this year for Vandy has been incredible. It's the SEC home opener, which is wild to say at this point in the season. There's going to be LSU folks that travel, make no mistake. What are you expecting, though, from the crowd? What's the vibe you pick up from? Are you expecting a Vandy crowd that can make it a true home field atmosphere at First Bank?
To put it into a simple word, no. Vanderbilt's fan base has been beaten down unlike any fan base across the country ever. If there is one fan base that the diehards are the most loyal, it is Vanderbilt fans. Oftentimes you hear constantly other fan bases talk about the turmoil and talk about being beaten down.
Best fan base in the country, most loyal fan base in the country. They have
no idea what they're talking about. So I think the diehards and the guys that are kind of on the fringe that are just ready to jump back on, they're back on board. But I've said it on the podcast, said it in group chats many times. It's going to take more than a 7-6 season with a Birmingham Bowl victory and a 5-1 start to the year to really get this fan base revitalized and grow the fan base. So unfortunately, I do think when you look at ticket prices on SeatGeek or wherever, I do think it's going to be about 60% purple and gold. I would love to see it a lot more than that. I do think the home side is going to be about 80% black and gold. But on the visitor side, don't expect too much. I don't think it's going to be a home environment for Vanderbilt, and I think players and staff they fully expect that, and they're no stranger to that whatsoever.
Two that you can expect in black and gold. These two guys right here. Come with me on a journey, real quick, Bill. The clock has struck 0. We're meeting back at lot 2. Vanderbilt has secured the win. What is the immediate takeaway in your mind? Like we said, it's not an eliminator, but realistically, I heard you guys talking about this. Asking any team with the parity in college football to go 5-0 in the remaining 5 games with what you got on the schedule. It's not that it's not doable, but the path narrows significantly. We're meeting back at lot 2. Vandy secured the win. Your confidence level in the Doors making a push realistically to the college football playoff.
This is the game. Euphoric will be my feeling afterwards. I will continue to consume
When's
some
the last time
libations.
Vandy won a home game against a top 10 team? Do we know that?
It was Alabama last year.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
It had been a long time before that, however. This game will turn Vanderbilt from being like, oh, they could do it, to they are a legitimate college football playoff contender. You're going to see them in those mock-up brackets for the college football playoff. They're going to elevate into at least a top 12 program, I think possibly a top 10 program, depending on how things shake out across college football. But my confidence level would be kind of through the roof at this point. They still have Kentucky and Auburn, both on the schedule. Those are two that you're not going to chalk up the Auburn game as a win, but that is a very winnable game, especially with what you saw Auburn do last week. And kind of, I don't want to say get screwed
is
over, but
still the head coach at that point? I don't know.
That could be part of it.
They don't win this weekend. I think there's a very good chance he's not.
Yeah, and that's going to be a huge thing to watch as well. I think that Tennessee game at the end of the season, that's why they need to win this one. That Tennessee game at the end of the year could potentially be the most hyped up rivalry game of all time between Vanderbilt and Tennessee. I mean, it could be playing for a spot in the college football playoff potentially. If they are able to win this LSU game, Vanderbilt's path to the college football playoff, they're no longer just a dark horse. I mean, they're probably over that 50% chance to make the college football playoff if they're able to beat LSU. So euphoric would be my feeling in lot 2, and I'll continue to drink those libations, as I said.
Libations on deck. It's going to be a fun one, man. Super excited. Do we know the menu for lot 2? Miller Burgers, I'm assuming, are on deck?
No, so since it's early, we're going to be doing some breakfast. So I think the plan is some Chick-fil-A chicken minis, maybe some donuts, some muffins, and we'll have champagne, mimosas out there, as well as some outlaw beer. So we'll be cooking.
It'll be flowing.
We'll be out there at 7 a.m. bright and early.
Plenty of libations, as much as you can stomach. It's going to be an absolutely electric weekend. Again, can't wait to do it with you. Can't wait to do it with all the great Dores out there. SEC Unfiltered tour on deck, and a game that really needs no extra hype or excitement or any sort of pump up, if you will. It's the Dores and it's LSU. Top 10 team coming into First Bank. A top 20 ranked, top 15 ranked?
Number 17.
Okay, top 20 ranked. So it's going to be a fun one.
I can't believe this game needs no hype. That's part of it. It's just I keep going back. I know we're about to close it out. I keep going back, and I think people really started, quote-unquote, following Vanderbilt on a national stage when Diego Pavia came and they had that Alabama win, and that's when they got on people's radar. But people forget that Clark Lee turned around this thing. They were 2-10 in 2023, and now we're talking about Vanderbilt having their second straight top 20 matchup on a national broadcast on ABC, this time favored against a top 10 team. I mean, the turnaround for Vanderbilt fans has just been a whirlwind. So it's going to be a hyped up game, and I can't wait for it. It's the clock is already ticking slowly for me. I've got to say that.
Well, Will, I'm honored to be there. As long as I'm welcomed in, I suppose. Hopefully Hack Squat Jim Duggan and I can figure it out on Saturday. Will Byrum, Dore Report, one of the best in the business. He and his co-host Trevor do a fantastic job. Will, again, thank you so much for coming in studio, and let folks know, in case they've been living under a rock, just where they can check out all you guys' great work. And for all the Dores, let them know. We'll drop the link, obviously, to the flyer, to everything you need to know, the details of the tailgate. But if they don't know somehow where lot 2 is, give us your best advertisement or best sales pitch for the tailgate before the game on Saturday.
Thanks for having me, Chris. First off, love being here live in the studio. You can follow the Dore Report across Twitter, Instagram, wherever, at the Dore Report. You can follow me at the Will Byrum on Twitter. As far as lot 2 goes, it is right next to First Bank Stadium. I mean, you can see First Bank Stadium from lot 2. If you type in parking lot 73A in your Apple Maps, that will take you right to lot 2. So that's the best way to do it. We will be out there as soon as they open up the lots. We'll be all set up by 7 a.m. All you can drink, all you can eat, be out there. Let's get loud. Let's get rowdy and anchor down, baby.
He's Will Byrum. I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll catch you next time.